Just sign as my emergency contact, she said. Her voice was shaking, but her grip was like iron. I did not know her. I had never seen her before in my life. I was just holding a clipboard, standing in the harsh, flickering fluorescent light of the emergency room hallway, wearing my gray canvas work jacket. She grabbed my left hand. Her fingers dug into my knuckles. Her skin was freezing cold. "Please," she whispered. The chaotic noise of the hospital seemed to vanish, leaving only the desperate, ragged sound of her breathing. "Please, they will not take me up to surgery without one on file. And if I do not go up right now, I am going to die." I looked down at her. She was pale, sweating, hunched over in a plastic waiting room chair. Her dark hair was plastered to her forehead. "I do not even know your name," I said. "It is Clara," she gasped, her eyes squeezing shut in a sudden wave of agony. "And you are my fiancé. Please, just sign the paper. Just be my fiancé for the next 3 hours." I stared at the medical intake coordinator who was looking at us with exhausted, skeptical eyes. I looked back at the woman bleeding through her sweater. I took the pen. I signed my name on the line. I did not know it in that moment, standing in the smell of bleach and old coffee. I did not know that by putting my name on that cheap, photocopied form, I was signing away my isolation. That is exactly how I met my wife. My name is Julian. I am 32 years old. I am a hospital maintenance supervisor in downtown Chicago. I fix things. That is what I do. I fix the broken heating vents in the pediatric ward. I repair the flickering overhead lights in the surgical suites. I calibrate the motorized beds. I unclog the drains. I am the ghost in the machine. I wear a gray uniform that makes me blend into the concrete walls. I walk the hidden corridors, the basement tunnels, the service elevators. People do not see me. Doctors walk right past me. Nurses look right through me. Patients never notice the man tightening the bolts on their bed frames. And for a very long time, I preferred it that way. I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be a ghost. Because ghosts do not have to feel anything. Ghosts do not have to deal with the messy, painful, unpredictable burden of being alive. I had spent the last 5 years completely switched off. I was walled off from the world. I was numb. It started when my father died. He was a mechanic, a quiet, sturdy, grease-stained man who spoke mostly in engine diagnostics and gentle advice. He raised me alone after my mother left. He was my entire world. When his heart gave out on a Tuesday afternoon, my world collapsed. I tried to keep going. I tried to maintain a relationship with a woman named Sarah. But she could feel the change in me. She could feel the sudden, massive void where my heart used to be. "You are an empty house, Julian," Sarah told me on the day she packed her bags. "The lights are on, but nobody is home. I cannot live in an empty house." She was right. I was empty. I decided then and there that I was the kind of person who does not get a family. I was the kind of person who is meant to be alone. I convinced myself that solitude was safer. If you do not let anyone in, they cannot die on you. They cannot pack their bags and leave you standing in the doorway. So I retreated. I took the night shifts. I lived in the basement of the hospital, metaphorically speaking. I fixed broken machines because machines make sense. Machines do not leave you. But my father had left me with a guiding principle. A piece of wisdom he used to repeat whenever we saw someone stranded on the side of the highway in the rain. "You protect strangers, Julian," my father would say, wiping grease from his hands. "You earn trust instead of breaking a spirit. You choose to dance with the one no one else will. And you never, ever walk away from someone standing in the storm." I had forgotten that advice for years. I had buried it under layers of grief and apathy. Until Clara grabbed my hand in the hallway. "Mr. the intake coordinator said, looking at my badge, "Are you her fiancé or not? Because her blood pressure is crashing, and she needs to designate a medical proxy if she goes under anesthesia." I looked at Clara. She was looking up at me. I saw the storm in her eyes. It was a massive, terrifying storm. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It had been so long since I had spoken with any real conviction. I am her fiancé. Where do I sign? They wheeled her away immediately. The doors to the surgical wing swung shut, leaving me standing alone with a clipboard and a pen. I should have gone back to work. I had a broken air conditioning unit on the 4th floor waiting for me. I had a list of work orders in my pocket. But I did not move. I sat down in the plastic waiting room chair. I looked at the emergency contact form. Name Clara Hayes. Age 28. Next of kin Julian. I waited. I waited for 3 hours. I watched the clock on the wall tick away the seconds. I watched the frantic ballet of the emergency room unfold around me. Paramedics rushing in. Weeping families. Exhausted doctors. I sat perfectly still. I was the emergency contact. I had a job to do. When the surgeon finally came out, he looked around the waiting room. Family for Clara Hayes? He called out. I stood up. I am her fiancé. The surgeon nodded, peeling off his surgical cap. She had a ruptured ovarian cyst. Massive internal bleeding. It was a close call, but we stopped the bleeding. She is going to be fine. She is in recovery now. Thank you, doctor, I said. You can go back and see her in a few minutes, he said. She will be groggy, but she needs someone to take her home when she is discharged tomorrow. Someone to keep an eye on her. I nodded. I did not know where she lived. I did not know her favorite color, but I was her fiancé. When I walked into the recovery room, it was dim. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a sound I knew well from fixing them. Clara was lying in the bed. She looked incredibly small. The color had not fully returned to her face. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached the bed. She looked at me. Confusion clouded her eyes for a second, and then recognition dawned. She reached out her hand. I took it. She did not let go. You stayed, she whispered, her voice raspy from the breathing tube. I signed the form, I said quietly. I take paperwork very seriously. A tiny, fragile smile touched the corners of her mouth. Thank you. You saved my life. The surgeons saved your life, I corrected her. I just provided a signature. No, she said, her grip tightening weakly on my fingers. You do not understand. If I had delayed even 10 more minutes trying to reach someone, I would not have made it. And if I do not make it... She stopped. A look of absolute terror washed over her face. It was not the fear of death. It was the fear of what happens after. If you do not make it, what? I asked gently. She squeezed her eyes shut. A single tear rolled down her cheek. My brother, she whispered. Leo. Over the next hour, as the anesthesia wore off, the story spilled out of her. It was as if she had been holding it in for years and my presence was the dam breaking. Clara was the sole guardian of her younger brother, Leo. He was 19, profoundly autistic, and required constant, dedicated care. Their parents had died in a car accident when Clara was 22. She had dropped out of graduate school, abandoned her career plans, and dedicated every waking second of her life to keeping Leo safe, happy, and out of the state system. But there was a problem, a massive, looming problem named Marcus. Marcus was Clara's ex-boyfriend. He was wealthy, well-connected, and deeply manipulative. He was a charming bully. To the outside world, Marcus was a successful real estate developer and a generous philanthropist. In private, he was controlling and cruel. When Clara finally found the courage to leave him a year ago, Marcus did not take it well. He did not like losing his possessions, and he knew exactly how to hurt her. Marcus had petitioned the court to take over guardianship of Leo. He claimed Clara was unstable. He claimed she was financially destitute. He claimed she was an unfit guardian who was neglecting Leo's medical needs. Marcus wanted control of the small trust fund their parents had left for Leo's care. But more than that, he wanted to punish Clara for walking away. We have a custody hearing in 3 weeks, Clara said, her voice shaking. Marcus has lawyers. He has character witnesses. He has convinced my extended family that I am a hysterical mess. They all think I am difficult. They think I am too weak to handle Leo. They think Marcus is the hero trying to step in and save my brother. I listened. I did not interrupt. I just held her hand. If Marcus found out I was in the hospital today, Clara continued, her breathing growing shallow, if he found out I almost died, he would use it. He would tell the judge I am physically incapable of caring for Leo. He would file an emergency injunction. He would take my brother away before I even got out of this bed. I looked at her. I saw the depth of her self-sacrifice. She had given up her youth, her freedom, her reputation, all to protect a boy who could not protect himself. She was not unstable. She was exhausted. She was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, and the world was calling her weak for staggering under the load. "That is why I needed an emergency contact," she whispered. "That is why I needed a fiancé. If the hospital social workers see that I have a support system, a partner, someone stable, they will not flag my file for child and family services. They will not alert the courts. I just need to look like I am not alone." She looked away, ashamed. "I am sorry. I should not have dragged you into this. You can go. I will figure something out." She tried to pull her hand away from mine. I did not let go. I thought about my father. I thought about the empty basement. I thought about the ghost I had become. "I am not going anywhere," I said. She looked back at me, startled. "I agreed to be your fiancé," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. "I am a man of my word. We have a hearing in 3 weeks. We need to get our story straight." Clara stared at me. "You are serious? You do not even know me." "I know that you protect the people you love," I said. "And I know what a bully looks like. My name is Julian. I fix things for a living. Let us fix this." That night, sitting in the dim light of the recovery room, we began the invention phase. It was a surreal experience. We had to build a relationship from scratch in a matter of hours. We had to know enough about each other to fool a hospital social worker, and eventually a judge. "Where did we meet?" Clara asked, wincing as she shifted in the bed. "Not a bar," I said. "Too generic. Not a coffee shop. Too cliché." "The hardware store," she suggested. "On 4th Street. I was trying to buy the right kind of hinges to fix a cabinet Leo broke. I was crying in the aisle because I was so tired. You asked if I needed help." I smiled. "I like that. Sounds like me. I would definitely notice someone struggling with hinges." "Okay," she said, pulling a notebook from her purse on the bedside table. She started writing furiously. "Hardware store. 6 months ago. What is your favorite food?" "Chicago deep dish," I said. "But only from that place on the south side." "What is yours?" "Thai takeout," she said. "Extra spicy." "What is your biggest fear?" "Being trapped underwater." I lied. She looked at me. She put the pen down. "Try again." I swallowed hard. The hospital room felt very quiet. "Being forgotten," I said softly. "Being completely invisible." Clara looked at me with a softness I had not seen in years. "I see you, Julian." Somewhere in the inventing, the strangest thing happened. We stopped inventing. We started actually talking. We talked through the night. The nurses came and went, checking her vitals, smiling at the devoted fiancé who refused to leave his chair. I told her about my father. I told her about the smell of motor oil in his garage, the way he used to hum when he was working on a transmission. I told her about Sarah, and how she called me an empty house. I had not spoken these words aloud to anyone in 5 years. They felt heavy, but leaving my mouth they felt like relief. Clara listened. She did not pity me. She did not look at me like I was broken. She just listened, her thumb gently tracing the back of my hand. She told me about Leo. She told me about his obsession with trains. She told me about the way he hums when he is happy, a low, rumbling sound that vibrates in his chest. She told me about the days when it is too hard, when he throws things, when the sensory overload becomes violent. She told me about Marcus. She told me how he used to belittle her in front of his friends, How he would tell her she was nothing without him. How he threatened to institutionalize Leo just to see the fear in her eyes. By the time the sun came up, casting a pale, gray light through the hospital window, we were no longer strangers. We were two people who had found a raft in the middle of a very dark ocean. The next afternoon, Clara was cleared for discharge. I drove her home in my beat-up truck. I helped her up the stairs to her apartment. That was the moment of seeing. When I opened the door, a young man was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by hundreds of meticulously arranged wooden train tracks. He was rocking back and forth, humming loudly, visibly distressed. A neighbor, an older woman who had been watching him, looked relieved to see us. "He has been very anxious, Clara. He knew you were gone." Clara did not hesitate. Despite the fresh stitches in her abdomen, despite the exhaustion radiating from her bones, she dropped to her knees on the floor. She did not touch him immediately. She knew better. She just sat near him. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. Her voice was a melody of pure, unconditional love. "I am back. The trains are safe. I am safe." Leo stopped rocking. He looked at her. He reached out and touched her arm. Then, he leaned his head against her shoulder. I stood in the doorway watching them. I saw her infinite patience. I saw the way she absorbed his anxiety and transformed it into peace. I saw the incredible, undeniable strength of a woman who the world had written off as weak. She was a fortress. She was the strongest person I had ever met. In that moment, standing in her cluttered living room, the pretense vanished for me. I was no longer pretending to be her fiancé. I was a man who was profoundly, overwhelmingly in love. Over the next 3 weeks, I moved into the spare room. I had vacation days saved up for years. I took them all. I cooked for them. I cleaned the apartment. I fixed the broken hinges on the cabinets. I fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom. I fixed the wobbly legs on the dining room table. I used my quiet skills to build a safe environment for them. Leo and I developed a routine. I did not force him to interact with me. I followed my father's principle. You earn trust, you do not demand it. I started bringing home broken mechanical things from the hospital. Old clocks, broken radios, discarded fans. I would sit on the floor opposite Leo and take them apart. Eventually, his curiosity won. He started sitting closer to me. He started handing me screwdrivers. By the end of the second week, we were rebuilding a toaster together in companionable silence. Clara watched us from the couch, resting, healing. I would catch her looking at me with tears in her eyes. I would just smile and hand Leo another screw. But the storm was still coming. The antagonist challenge arrived 3 days before the hearing. Marcus found out about the hospital visit. He had someone on the inside, a clerk he had bribed, who tipped him off that Clara had been admitted for emergency surgery. He did not wait for the court date. He showed up at the apartment with his lawyer and a private social worker he had hired to evaluate the home. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches. Clara was on the couch, reading a book to Leo. The knock on the door was loud and demanding. Clara froze. The color drained from her face. She knew that knock. I wiped my hands on a towel. "I will get it," I said quietly. I opened the door. Marcus stood there in a $1,000 suit. He was handsome, perfectly groomed, and radiating arrogance. Behind him stood a nervous-looking lawyer and a stern woman with a clipboard. Marcus looked at my gray canvas work shirt. He smirked. "Are you the plumber? Move aside. I am here to see Clara and my ward." "I am not the plumber," I said, blocking the doorway with my body. "And Leo is not your ward." Marcus scoffed. He tried to push past me. I did not budge. "I am a mechanic. I spend my days lifting industrial motors. I am built like a brick wall." Marcus bounced off my chest. His face flushed with anger. "Who the hell are you?" "I am Julian," I said calmly. "I am Clara's fiancé, and you are trespassing." Clara stood up from the couch, pulling Leo behind her. She was trembling, but she stood tall. "Marcus," she said, her voice tight. You have no right to be here. Marcus laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Oh, Clara, please. You think this rent-a-thug is going to save you? I know you were in the hospital. I know you had surgery. You are physically incapable of caring for this boy. I am here to take him to a proper facility until the judge grants me full custody on Friday. He turned to the social worker. You see this? She is living in squalor. She is hiring day laborers to playing house. She is unstable. The social worker looked at her clipboard, frowning. Mrs. Hayes, we received a report of medical neglect and an unsafe environment due to your recent hospitalization. This was the high-stakes event. This was the moment the narrative could break. I stepped forward. I did not raise my voice. I did not get angry. I channeled my father's quiet, unshakable steadiness. Ma'am, I said, addressing the social worker directly. My name is Julian. I am Clara's fiancé. I have been living here for 3 weeks, providing full-time care for both Clara and Leo during her recovery. I pulled a thick folder from the counter. I had prepared it. I am a man who understands paperwork. Here are the medical proxy forms from the hospital, signed and dated, I said, handing her a copy. Here is a daily log of Leo's meals, medication schedule, and behavioral therapy exercises, which I have been overseeing. Here is a letter from Leo's primary care physician, stating that his current home environment is excellent and that removing him would be deeply traumatizing. The social worker took the folder. She looked surprised. She began flipping through the meticulous logs. Marcus stepped forward, his charm evaporating, replaced by ugly rage. This is a sham. He is a fake. She hired him. She is a hysterical, broke mess who cannot even take care of herself. He reached out to grab Clara's arm. I moved faster than he could blink. I caught his wrist in midair. I gripped it with the strength of a man who turns rusted wrenches for a living. Marcus gasped in pain. I looked him dead in the eye. I spoke very softly so only he could hear. You earn trust, Marcus, I whispered, reciting my father's words like a prayer. You do not demand it, and you do not break a spirit. If you ever try to touch her again, I will break every bone in your perfectly manicured hand. Do you understand me? Marcus stared at me. For the first time in his life, the bully was terrified. He saw the absolute, immovable resolve in my eyes. He saw that I was not playing a game. I released his wrist. He stumbled backward, cradling his hand. The social worker looked up from the folder. She had seen the exchange. She had seen Marcus's sudden aggression, and she had seen my calm, protective restraint. She looked at Clara, who was standing safely behind me, her hand resting on Leo's shoulder. Leo was calm. He was not humming. He was watching me with wide, trusting eyes. The narrative cracked. The false perception shattered. The social worker closed the folder. She looked at Marcus with disgust. Mr. Sterling, the social worker said coldly, I have seen enough. This home is safe. This child is well cared for. Your allegations appear to be entirely baseless and retaliatory. If you do not leave this premises immediately, I will call the police myself. Marcus's lawyer put a hand on his client's shoulder. We should go, Marcus. Now. Marcus glared at me, his face purple with rage. But he had lost. The illusion of the concerned benefactor was gone. He turned and stormed down the hallway, the lawyer trailing behind him. The social worker turned back to us. I apologize for the intrusion, Mrs. Hayes. I will be submitting a report to the judge recommending that your custody remains undisturbed. You have a very strong support system here. She smiled at me. You are a good man, Julian. Thank you, ma'am, I said. When the door clicked shut, the apartment fell dead silent. Clara stood frozen for a moment. Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor. I held her against my chest. She buried her face in my shoulder and began to sob. It was not a cry of fear. It was the deep, shuddering release of a burden she had carried for far too long. I held her. I stroked her hair. I looked over her shoulder and saw Leo watching us. I gave him a small smile and a thumbs up. Leo smiled back and gave me a clumsy thumbs up. The Friday custody hearing was a formality. The judge read the social worker's report, looked at Marcus's history of harassment, and dismissed the petition entirely. Furthermore, the judge granted a restraining order against Marcus, forbidding him from contacting Clara or Leo ever again. External vindication had arrived. The world finally saw Clara for what she was. A hero. That evening, we sat on the roof of her apartment building, looking out over the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled like distant stars. The pretend phase was over. The crisis was averted. The paperwork was no longer necessary. I looked at Clara. She looked more beautiful, more at peace, than I had ever seen her. "So," she said softly, staring at the skyline, "the contract is fulfilled. The emergency is over." "Yes," I said. My chest felt tight. The old fear, the ghost, tried to creep back in. "She does not need you anymore. Go back to the basement." "You can go back to your life now, Julian," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You saved us. You did exactly what you promised. You can go." I looked down at my hands. I thought about the empty house. I thought about the silence of my apartment. I made the choice to be real. "I do not want to go back to the basement," I said. Clara turned to look at me, her eyes wide. "This is not pretend for me anymore, Clara," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It never was. From the moment you grabbed my hand in that hallway, I was yours. I love you. I love Leo. I want to fix things in this apartment for the rest of my life." A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the city light. "You are not an empty house, Julian," she whispered, reaching out to touch my face. "You are the safest place I have ever known." I leaned in and kissed her. It was our first real kiss. It tasted like salt and hope and the absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The time skip montage of our lives began that night. At 1 month, I officially moved out of my apartment and brought all my tools to her place. At 3 months, Leo spoke his first full sentence to me. He handed me a broken alarm clock and said, "Julian, fix it, please." I cried in the kitchen for 20 minutes. At 6 months, Clara went back to school. She enrolled in night classes to finish her degree in special education. I stayed home with Leo, building elaborate wooden train cities that spanned the entire living room. At 1 year, we went back to the hospital. Not for an emergency, but for a promise. We stood in the exact spot in the hallway where she had first grabbed my hand. The fluorescent lights were still harsh. The smell of bleach was still sharp. I got down on one knee. I pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was my father's old silver ring, polished until it shone like a mirror. "Clara," I said, looking up at the woman who had dragged me back into the light, "will you let me be your emergency contact for the rest of our lives?" She laughed, a bright, beautiful sound that echoed down the clinical hallway. "Yes," she said, pulling me up to kiss her. "Yes, forever." We got married in a small park near the lake. Leo was my best man. He hummed happily through the entire ceremony, holding the rings in a special wooden box we had built together. When I look back on that day in the hospital, I realize the profound irony of it all. I thought I was saving her. I thought I was the strong one, stepping in to protect a desperate woman from a terrible storm. I thought I was fulfilling my father's mandate to shield the vulnerable. But that is the "she saved me" twist. Clara was never the one drowning. She was swimming against a hurricane, yes, but she was strong enough to keep her head above water. She was strong enough to keep Leo above water. I was the one drowning. I was at the bottom of the ocean, perfectly still, letting the darkness consume me. I had convinced myself that being numb was the same as being safe. I had convinced myself that I was a ghost. When Clara grabbed my hand in that hallway, she was not just asking for a signature. She was reaching down into the dark and pulling me back to the surface. She forced me to care. She forced me to fight. She forced me to open my heart and let the messy, painful, beautiful light of the world back in. She rescued me from my own isolation. That is the universal lesson here. We spend so much time walking past each other, assuming we know the whole story. We look at a tired woman in a hospital and see weakness. We look at a quiet man in a gray uniform and see nobody. But if you stop, if you look closely at the people the world has written off, you will find fortresses. You will find heroes. You will find the very people who can save your life. My father was right. You choose to dance with the one no one else will. You protect the people standing in the storm. Because sometimes the person you step into the storm to save is the only one who knows how to lead you back home. Ride safe. If you believe in love that shows up when we have stopped believing, tap that like button. Hit subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. Share a time when a stranger showed you unexpected kindness in the comments below, and let me know where in the world you are watching from. Would you have signed the paper for a stranger?